Boy! There was a boy! Zoe cried as the doctors placed the 6-year-old girl on a stretcher. Where? Where did you see the boy? The ambulance doctors asked. There, a boy. Zoe slowly closed her eyes. It was as if she sank into some dark abyss for a few seconds, then came back to herself and kept talking about a boy. Finally, she asked about her mom. Where's my mom? But the doctors didn't have a chance to answer her question. The girl lost consciousness. Perhaps it was for the best that they didn't answer. Zoe's mother had died. She had already learned about her mother's death in the hospital. Zoe didn't react at all. She hardly reacted to anything anymore. She just kept drawing the boy. The doctors were puzzled. What was this persistent idea? There was no boy at the accident site where they ended up with her mother. The accident was simply terrible, a real catastrophe. 2 cars collided head-on. Trying to save her daughter, Zoe's mother tried to divert the impact to the side of the car where Zoe was seated and sacrificed herself. Fortunately, in violation of the rules, Zoe, though in a special child seat, was not buckled up. Due to the impact, she was thrown out through the broken window, and only thanks to this, she survived. If not for this mistake, her mother's sacrifice would have been in vain. The driver of the other car, the cause of the accident, was declared dead just a second before the crash. He had a massive heart attack and died instantly at full speed. His wife, who was sitting next to him, didn't even realize what had happened. She died with her husband. Zoe's survival could only be called a miracle. The couple's car flipped in the air and fell on the car where Zoe and her mother were, right where Zoe's seat was. Emergency medical responders found Zoe sitting in tears in front of a pile of wreckage, saying repeatedly, "Boy! Boy! There was a boy! Do you have any children besides Zoe?" The doctor at the hospital asked Zoe's father with surprise. "And no son, for sure?" "No, I tell you." "Why do you insist? What's wrong with my girl?" The father was worried. Zoe was in the intensive care unit, and there was no way to get in on any pretext or for any amount of money. You see, she kept talking about some boy when the ambulance took her. And now she constantly draws him everywhere, on scraps of paper, on napkins. She even drew him on a pillowcase once until the nurses brought her an album, the doctor explained to the father. "So what's the problem? Ask her who the boy is she's drawing." Zoe's father said. "Yes, that's the thing. You see, there is a problem." The doctor hesitated a bit. After she regained consciousness, Zoe has been silent. "I'm afraid she won't be able to answer anything. The head injury was too serious. Zoe has a complex and difficult operation scheduled. I would advise you to donate blood, just in case. She might need a transfusion." "Dear God!" the shocked father could only say. He couldn't even imagine what he was about to go through. Not long ago, they were a happy, close-knit family, planning where to go for summer vacation. And now, in an instant, everything collapsed. One unfortunate incident, the death of one person, led to a series of deaths. One phone call on a beautiful morning, and life completely fell apart. Henry couldn't come to his daughter earlier. He was busy with his wife's funeral. When he arrived at the hospital, Zoe had already been informed that her mother had died. He forgot to warn not to tell the child while she was in the hospital to avoid trauma. But what's done is done. Now all Henry could do was wait for Zoe to undergo this silly operation. Wait for her to be transferred to a room, and finally, be able to come to her and hug her. Poor thing, how hard it must be for her alone, nowhere to lean and cry, knowing that her mother has died. Henry's heart was simply breaking, Tears were flowing down his cheeks as he imagined how awful his daughter must feel now in the intensive care unit with no one to talk to. Oh, she doesn't talk now. Lord, why did everything collapse on his family? Everyone says you shouldn't openly show how happy you feel, and you should be cautious about rejoicing. Henry and Grace didn't play it safe, they were openly happy. Henry's mother said to her son, "Henry, stop teasing fate, it doesn't like happy people." "Mom, again with your superstitions?" "Well, fine, fine. I won't do it anymore." He smiled and continued not to believe his mother's words. Grace was like a talisman for Henry. With her appearance in his life, things seemed to go uphill on their own. For a while, Henry still indulged in his habits, but it became uninteresting to him. Grace understood everything and didn't reproach her husband for his visits to friends and late-night revelries. She was 4 years older than Henry and obviously wiser. Grace never prohibited anything, she just waited for him. She waited when he went with classmates to the dacha for the entire weekend. She waited when he had negotiations in the sauna until 5 in the morning. "Grace, why don't you go anywhere with me?" Henry once asked her. "Where should I go?" "I'm not interested in that. Such pastimes don't attract me," his wife replied. "Watch your friends?" "Well, I have my own." "Or do you think I'm bored while you're not around?" "I always have something to do in your absence." Henry was stunned. What a twist. And what interesting thing was his wife doing while he was getting drunk with his buddies in the sauna? With buddies and not only. Did Henry cheat on his wife? Let's be honest, yes, he did cheat. But it wasn't some constant passion or a secret lover. The guys ordered girls to the sauna, and he, would refuse? Henry didn't even consider it cheating. What cheating if he couldn't remember the face of the girl who hung on him the next morning? Oops, Grace isn't bored without him. And what's annoying is that you can't ask directly. "Well, tell me, wife, what are you doing here without me?" For such questions, one had to be squeaky clean himself, otherwise his wife would ask in return. "And what are you doing there with your buddies without me?" Well, in general, gradually and quietly, Grace pulled Henry to her side. He stopped going to bars, stopped spending honestly earned money, and stopped treating his buddies for free. And gradually, he noticed it himself, no more freebies, no more buddies. They don't call anymore, they don't invite. "You're a smart woman, Grace," his mother told her. "Thanks to you for rescuing my son from that bad company." Well, along with that, things started looking up. Money started to be spent wisely, and investments were made. The business began to grow and expand. Henry himself started scratching his head when he remembered how much money he used to spend on those stupid buddies of his. They, with Grace, became, if not the richest, then certainly one of the wealthiest people in town. Not Rockefellers, of course, but they could afford something, and then Zoe was born. Grace was against naming her Zoe. "What kind of name is that?" she said. But Henry had long since decided, even from childhood, that if he had a daughter, her name would be Zoe. "Look at her, who she is. Zoe is pure, like an angel," Henry would say. Grace wanted to name her Camilla or Samantha. "Isn't it easier?" Henry would curse. In general, some Tatar names. "Look at your daughter, what does Samantha have to do with her? She's a blonde," Henry would say. "You know, many children are born blonde, and then their hair darkens. Did you have that?" "Ask your mom about it," Grace replied to him. "Well, why should I ask? I can see perfectly well on my own, without you or my mom, that my daughter will be a blue-eyed blonde. Pure, fresh like Zoe," Henry replied. He was so confident. Zoe was now 6, and she remained a blue-eyed blonde, a pure angel. Wheat curls framed her slender face with huge blue, almost blue eyes. While Grace was still in the maternity hospital, Henry took a certificate, ran to the registry office, and registered his daughter Zoe. "That's it, there's nothing more to argue about," he said. He thought Grace would catch him in the ward, wanted to jump out the window from his enraged wife, but then nothing happened. Grace somehow got used to it and calmed down, and even affectionately called her daughter Zoe. "You have a beautiful name," she would say to her daughter. "I know," she replied, "just learning to speak. That's what Daddy called me." "Yes, our daddy is like a hammer," Grace noticed. "Why a hammer?" wondered the daughter. "You'll understand when you grow up," Grace said sadly. But the daughter didn't notice this hidden sadness and a bit of sarcasm in her mother's voice. She was still a little girl. And now, all of this is over. It's over, and it will never happen again. Grace will never tease Henry again, they will never laugh together. She will never talk to her daughter again, and it seems the daughter will never talk to anyone. Henry went crazy from all this. And what if Zoe has surgery? What about her hair? Lord, no. They will cut her beautiful curls. Yes, hair is not legs, they will grow back. But we know that adults, but what about a 6-year-old child? Yes, Zoe will be shocked when she sees herself after the surgery, and again there will be no one next to her. No one will be able to comfort and support her. Something needs to be done. Maybe transfer her to a private clinic or give money so they let him into the intensive care unit. Lord, with his money, he can buy the whole clinic and set his own rules. Who came up with this anyway? In the West, in civilized countries, everyone is allowed into the intensive care unit and everywhere. Try not to let them in. They even bring pets if it will really help the patient. And here. A funny thought flashed through Henry's mind. What if he went to the chief doctor and suggested sponsoring their clinic? Well, what do they need, what equipment, and he would allow him to go to his daughter right now and after the surgery. Henry got up from the bench and walked confidently towards the chief doctor's office. "Henry, it's good that you came in," the chief doctor greeted him, without lifting his head from the papers. "I have something to discuss with you." He probably decided to ask for some money, Henry thought. Found out who I am and decided to take the bull by the horns? Well, fine, I also have a request for him. With the familiar look of a winner, Henry sat down in the chair opposite the doctor. Leaned back, put one hand on the table, and smiled. He showed the doctor with all his appearance that he was the master of the situation. And he is ready for any requests and any amounts if he gets a positive answer. Have you already given blood just in case if the child needs a transfusion? The chief doctor asked and only now raised his eyes and looked directly at Henry. The doctor's gaze, it must be said, was very piercing, firm, tough, stern. The profession leaves its mark. Such a look instantly takes away all arrogance. You want to stand at attention right away, and your hands fall to your sides. Henry tensed, removed his hand from the table. I haven't given it yet, just sent it for analysis to determine compatibility. And what? Henry tensed. Why are you delaying? You should have done it right away. There would be no need to puncture the vein twice, said the chief doctor and continued to drill Henry with his eyes. To be honest, Henry knew little about their behind-the-scenes affairs. His mother worked as a lab assistant in a laboratory and used to tell him all sorts of things. It's not that he was reluctant to give his blood, he just didn't intend to replenish their blood bank for free. Let them first say that his blood is a match for his daughter, and he'll give them as much as 3 liters. Moreover, absolutely free of charge. But if they are incompatible, where will they put his material? Right, they'll send it to the bank for free, and by the way, donors get paid for it. No, Henry didn't need the money, he just advocated for fairness. What's wrong with my daughter? Henry asked anxiously. She's fine, but your blood type doesn't match the girl's, the chief doctor said. And so? Henry didn't understand. Well, don't you know what blood type your child has? The chief doctor asked. Believe it or not, no. Should I? Somehow, I never had to deal with such situations, Henry shrugged. It says in the documents that your wife had the first positive blood type, yours is the second positive, the doctor stared into Henry's eyes. And your child has the third negative blood type. So what? Henry didn't understand. The thing is, with your and your wife's blood types, a child with the third, let alone negative, blood type cannot be born, the head explained and even, for added importance, showed Henry the table. Could there be a mistake, doctor? We had joint childbirth. I personally, you could say, took my daughter. I cut the umbilical cord myself. Grace is definitely the mother of the child, Henry said, catching himself and realizing only the harsh reality. Then the second option, the doctor sighed and closed the folder with papers on the table. Now what should I do? Henry asked. Don't despair. In fact, according to statistics, almost 70% of men raise children who are not their own and don't even know about it. You love the child, and I hope she loves you too. We'll find a suitable donor, the doctor said, paused a little, and added, changing his tone. But if you leave and don't come back, no one will blame you. What will happen to the girl? Henry asked. Are there any relatives on the mother's side? The doctor asked. No, Henry shook his head. Grace was an orphan. Well, then we'll send the girl to an orphanage. Like mother, like daughter. That's life. Many children repeat the fate of their parents, the doctor said. Henry left the office not just stunned, he was somehow devastated, exhausted, humiliated. He walked home, feeling like everyone on the street knew about what had happened, as if everyone was examining his branching horns and laughing. A little more, and they would start pointing fingers and shouting after him. Dear. Horned man. Fool. And the most hurtful thing was that he wouldn't ask anyone anymore. Grace had been lying 6 feet under for 9 days now, and she hadn't been noticed by anyone. You can sit at her grave for as long as you want and question into the void, how, who, and most importantly, why. How could she? How could she betray him? She was so smart, wise, honest. Now Henry looked at his wife with completely different eyes. I don't have time to miss you. Her words echoed in his head. Now it's clear why she was never bored. How can you get bored when you're hanging out with guys? In Henry's mind, dates and numbers raced frantically. Almost 7 years ago, what was she doing? What was she interested in? Where did she go? Whom did she meet? Whom did she communicate with? If not him, then who is Zoe's father? Yes, and he himself, isn't he good? He shouldn't have hung out with his buddies in saunas with girls. The result, Grace wasn't bored. She had her share of fun too. And as a result, someone else's child. And she didn't say anything. What a quiet one. Yes, it would have been better if she had told him everything herself. But he would have forgiven her, of course, he would have forgiven her. He loved her so much, the foolish idiot. He would have forgiven and accepted everything. Wait. Maybe she didn't even know herself? So what? A few times, maybe, then pregnancy. Yes, exactly. Grace would have told for sure. She wouldn't have deceived him. She wasn't like that. Thoughts swirled in Henry's head. She's not like that. What is she like? After what he learned a few hours ago, can he confidently say that he knew his wife inside out? No. So why did he assume she wasn't like that? Or maybe she was exactly like that. Even this morning, he was sure that after lunch, he would be sitting by his beloved daughter's bed, holding her hand, admiring her drawings. He was 100% sure of that. He even hoped that when Zoe saw her daddy, she would start talking. She always loved him even more than her mother. Grace would sometimes even feel jealous. She wouldn't show it, but Henry could see it in her eyes when the daughter stuck to him in the evenings, and eventually, the girl fell asleep in his arms. Imagine, I can spend hours putting her to bed, she would be wriggling, looking around, giggling. And with you for 15 minutes, and she's out like a light, even with the noise of the TV, Grace would say. Daddy's girl. Henry would respond. Now it was clear, everything fell into place. Of course, Grace felt jealous. She knew that the girl wasn't his. Or did she? How to find out the truth now? How to get to the bottom of it? Hold a seance or something? Nonsense. Henry was sure he would go crazy with these thoughts. Henry, what happened? His mother asked when she opened the front door. Mom, what are you doing here? Henry asked in surprise. Well, I actually live here. But what are you doing here? His mother asked. Lost in his thoughts after what he heard from the doctor, Henry didn't realize he came not to his home but to his mother's. I was thinking, why the key doesn't fit. I'll go, sorry, Henry said. You won't go anywhere in such a state, his mother said, and literally dragged her son into her apartment. What happened? Something with Zoe? No, nothing happened, Henry said, somewhat detached. And Zoe is fine, if you can call it fine at all. Suddenly Henry felt a kind of universal fatigue, a huge and immense weight pressing on him as if it were a concrete slab on his shoulders. As if the entire sky collapsed, and he, like Atlas, had to bear it on his shoulders so that everyone else could live and breathe peacefully. Henry slumped to the floor right at the entrance and started crying. He hadn't cried so much since he was about 9 or 8, coming home with a scraped knee. Back then, he fell off his bike, but it wasn't about the knee. It was about falling while jumping from a makeshift ramp near the river. All the guys laughed, and the bike shattered. It was a pity about the bike. Henry knew that his mother had saved up for a whole year, putting money aside from her salary, to buy him such a gift. And he, not only did he embarrass himself in front of the boys, he also ruined the bike. Now it was the same feeling and the same state as in childhood. He had embarrassed himself in front of everyone. How many more people knew that he was a cuckold, raising someone else's child? He had embarrassed himself. Like then, in childhood, his mother, without saying a word, sat down with him on the floor, embraced his head, put it on her lap, and quietly hummed a lullaby. Back then, in childhood, he fell asleep on her lap, she carried him to bed, and in the morning, they together went to the river, picked up the twisted bike, and brought it to Logan on the square. He was always there with his whetstone, sharpening knives, soldering pots, fixing various household appliances. I can't buy you a new bike, his mother said. But I can pay for the repair. But this is the last time. Next time, you'll pay for the repair yourself. Or you'll do without a bike. Henry nodded. Wow, it got him good, Logan said and whistled. Then he leaned toward Henry and asked in his ear, "How was the flight?" "Wow," Henry could only say. And here they are again, sitting on the floor in the hallway, just like back then, and his mother is singing a lullaby again. Only her son is not 9 years old anymore, but slightly over 30, and his mother can no longer carry him to bed. And life is not a bike, and no Logan will fix it. "And now calmly tell me what happened," his mother asked the next morning. "I can't. Not now. Maybe later." "Yes, little kids, little troubles, big kids, big troubles," sighed his mother. Then they sat and drank tea with jam and remained silent. And suddenly she asked, "Why are you sitting? Don't you need to go to the hospital? Zoe is having surgery today." Henry remained silent and just shook his head negatively. "What, not today? Did I make a mistake? When then?" His mother was clearly nervous. "Henry, why are you sitting like a statue and always silent? Does your daughter have surgery today?" "I don't have a daughter," Henry said calmly and somewhat detached. "Are you crazy? What about Zoe?" his mother shouted at him. "I don't know, don't get so worked up, Mom. Let her father take care of what's going on with Zoe, and I have no daughter." "I don't have any children at all," Henry said. He said it calmly, and it somehow immediately became easier on his soul, as if the slab that fell on him yesterday became a little smaller. "What are you saying? Have you gone mad?" his mother asked and sat down, weakening on a stool. "No, the blood test showed that she has a negative blood type, and mine is the second positive. And Grace had the first positive," Henry explained. He knew that his mother worked in a laboratory, and he didn't need to explain what it meant. If Zoe were their daughter with Grace, her blood type would be 50-50, either Henry's or his wife's. But not the third, and certainly not negative. "I knew that someday such a moment would come when everything would become known," his mother said sadly. "Yes, here it is. The moment has come," Henry confirmed and suddenly paused, staring at his mother. "Wait, you knew everything?" "Son," his mother tried to reassure him. "Son." "What, son? Were you in it together with her? Did you both lead me around like a fool for so many years? Who is he?" "Who?" Henry yelled, out of himself. Then he slumped onto a chair, and his head dropped. "Son," his mother tried to talk to him. "Don't say anything, Mom. You betrayed me together with her. You covered for her. Thank God, she's in the ground now. And I don't want to see you anymore, you all betrayed me," Henry said and headed for the door. "Stop right there," his mother commanded with a loud and firm voice. Henry forgot that before the laboratory, she worked at the Military Medical Academy. "You will sit down this instant and listen to me, Henry." Like a schoolboy, Henry turned around and sat back in his place. When his mother called him by his full name, arguing with her was useless. It meant only one thing: he had really upset her, and in such a state, jokes with his mom were not good. "Do you remember your lifestyle before Zoe was born?" his mother asked her son. "Oh, Mom, don't start. Now you'll say that we're even. She just avenged me. I know your female solidarity. You covered up her infidelity." Henry defended himself. "She didn't cheat on you," his mother said. A pause hung in the air. "Grace was as pure as glass. I can swear on the Bible about that," she continued. "Then how do you explain what the doctor told me yesterday? Are you going to tell me about miracles or immaculate conception? It seems to me that you got a little carried away with the Bible after Dad's death." He argued with his mother just for the sake of decency, showing that he was no longer a teenager or a boy. However, he didn't get up and didn't rush to leave to finish the conversation. Exactly. It was a real immaculate conception, his mother said. Mom, do you believe that yourself? Henry skeptically remarked. Of course, I do. Thousands of women, thanks to this method, became mothers and gave joy not only to their husbands, but also to themselves. The joy of becoming fathers, his mother said. I don't understand what you're talking about. Are you in some sect? Henry was surprised. No, I'm not in a sect, fool. Haven't you heard of the in vitro fertilization procedure? It's called IVF, his mother replied. I've heard. So, did Grace do IVF? But I don't understand. Why didn't she tell me? And why? Why did she do IVF? Henry sat there bewildered, as if he had been hit by a dusty bag from around the corner. That's because you, fool, can't have children, his mother blurted out. And that's a lie, Mom. I understood. Now you're just covering Grace with all your might because she's already dead. I checked after the army. Remember, I served in the missile forces. And before demobilization, our military doctor told us all to get tested just in case. There was a chance that we could have caught a dose of radiation. It was top secret information, so they didn't check in the army, but before demobilization, they told us. And you know what? Everything was fine with me. So, don't tell me about it. Better tell me who Zoe's father is if you know everything. Stop it, his mother said. The thing is, it was. I mentioned your lifestyle for a reason. For years before Zoe was born, do you remember how you were lying at my place so as not to infect Grace with the flu? Before the exam session? She was taking state exams then. You supposedly caught a cold somewhere at a birthday party in one of your saunas during your regular drinking binges? Remember? Well, let's say I do. So what? Henry asked, not understanding. Forgot how you refused to go to the doctor and were gulping down aspirin like candy? You thought you had not only the flu but also angina. You gargled your throat, and your neck was like this. His mother showed with her hands how thick his neck was. Well, I remember. What's next? Henry still didn't understand. While you were asleep, I did take your blood for analysis and brought it to the laboratory. I was sure you had caught something venereal, and that's why you were lying at my place, to really avoid infecting Grace, his mother explained. So, what do you think of me, then? Her son smirked. Yes, it's not about my opinion, but the fact that you had an epidemic mumps, his mother said. And so what? Henry didn't understand. It means that mumps makes men who had it in adulthood sterile. Grace was lying at my feet, begging me not to tell you. She was sure that you would divorce her if you found out. You knew how much she wanted children, and out of nobility, you would have set her free. And yes, it's really female solidarity. I told her first, thank God, or there would be no Zoe now. So, Grace didn't cheat on you. We just chose a donor whose childhood photos resembled yours. Conception happened in a test tube. Grace is as pure as the Virgin Mary before Joseph. My mother fell silent. They sat in silence for a couple of minutes. Suddenly, Henry jumped up as if scalded. What time is it? Have they already done the surgery? I need to be with my daughter. Henry exclaimed and rushed out of the apartment. Grace, I hope you'll put in a good word for me there if needed, his mother said, crossed herself, and looked through the window at the sky. The operation was successful, the threat to life had passed, and fortunately, no transfusions were needed. On the same evening, Zoe was transferred to a separate room. Naturally, Henry took care of it. Now he could sit by his daughter's bedside as much as he wanted, holding her hand. She was his daughter, his princess, his little flower, his Zoe. And he didn't care about any analyses. Mom was right. If they hadn't kept silent, this little angel wouldn't be in the world now. And there would be no meaning in continuing to live for him. Thank you for your wisdom and foresight, Henry thought. He was no longer bothered by what people would say or think, and that concrete slab had lifted off his shoulders. Now he could breathe freely and live again. Physically, the girl quickly recovered, and doctors tried to make the scar on her head almost invisible, and even her lovely curls were hardly affected. However, there was one problem: Zoe still hadn't started talking. Doctors said that from their side, they had done everything possible, and Zoe should be speaking. Apparently, these were already psychological issues. It happens to children who have experienced certain tragic circumstances. Witnessing the mother's death with their own eyes, what else could be more traumatic? Henry brought his daughter home, but she couldn't just be sent to kindergarten or the school she was supposed to attend. She needed rehabilitation and serious work with a psychologist. Henry hired all these doctors to come to his house, but no one could handle Zoe's nasty character. The sweet and tender girl turned into a real little devil. She threw various things at her attendants. She could just come from behind and pour water, and it didn't have to be cold. Everyone, sooner or later, ran away from her. "Daughter, it's not possible like this." Henry tried to talk to her. He was already desperate, not even able to hire a simple babysitter for Zoe. The town was small, and news of the rich wild child spread very quickly. "What do you want, sweetheart?" Henry asked. Apparently, Zoe was very angry that she couldn't speak, and that's what caused such changes in her behavior. And she couldn't write yet. After all, she was only 6. "Sweetheart, what should we do?" Henry asked repeatedly. Each time, Zoe drew a boy and showed him the drawings. There were broken cars and a boy. Henry showed the drawings to psychologists. Of course, Zoe was not a professional artist, and her scribbles were hardly understandable. Psychologists said that in the image of the boy, or let's say, the child, Zoe embodies her loneliness. She wants to show that she lacks a friend. Okay, but where can I get her a friend? Henry thought. Since Zoe had no one to leave at home with, and she also threw toys at her grandmother, Henry took her everywhere with him. But this couldn't go on forever. One day, as they were passing by the city park, Zoe started clapping her hands and knocking on the car window. That's how she attracted attention, clapping her hands. The father stopped and asked, "What happened?" And Zoe jumped out of the car and pointed to a boy about 10 years old digging in the dumpster. "What? Where?" Henry didn't understand. Then Zoe ran up to the boy and hugged him, clinging to him. They had to take the boy with them. He didn't need much persuasion to take a ride in a beautiful car, and thankfully, he wasn't mute. Henry chatted with the boy on the way, while Zoe clung to him and didn't want to let go. Carter turned out to be a homeless child. He had been living in a basement without parents for a long time. He didn't want to talk about what happened, but Henry understood that they had died. The man fed the boy, told him to wash up, and offered him a job. He briefly explained to Carter that Zoe had lost her mother and now couldn't speak. She saw him from the car window and ran to him herself. Henry suggested Carter become Zoe's caregiver. "You can have anything you want. Whatever he finds in the fridge. Play anywhere and as much as you want, swim in the pool. What else does a barefoot orphan need?" Of course, Carter agreed. Actually, Henry made a small mistake. Carter was not 10 but 11. He was 5 years older than Zoe. So, Carter stayed with Henry and Zoe. Henry did everything possible to become Carter's guardian and get him documents. Carter didn't remember his last name, or perhaps he didn't want to say it. Henry gave him his patronymic and his last name, and Carter didn't mind. Now, Zoe had an older brother. They spent a lot of time together. Henry hired tutors for Carter at home. He didn't want Zoe to be alone while the boy was at school. Everyone was happy. Now, every free minute, the children drew something, played. Zoe even started smiling a bit, and now she was much calmer. She didn't play pranks on Carter. After all, she chose him herself. And she even stopped throwing toys at her grandmother. So 6 years passed. Zoe was already 12, and Carter was 17. But the children still spent a lot of time together. They even slept in the same room. On Zoe's birthday, Henry noticed that the children were exchanging strange glances. Oh, God! Really? How did he not think of it before? Carter, the young man who spends all his time alone with a beautiful girl. How did he, the father, not realize it immediately? Henry barely held himself back from breaking things. That evening, he installed a hidden camera in the children's room. Before kicking the boy out of the house, whom he himself persuaded to move in, Henry needed substantial evidence of the boy's immoral behavior. The next day, the father tremblingly started the recording. "Just touch her. Just reach out," Henry muttered. But as soon as he saw what was on the recording, he simply fainted. Zoe and Carter were talking. They spoke to each other like normal people. They discussed the accident that happened long ago. Through their drawings, the children had figured out that they were both in that accident. And Carter was the boy Zoe had insisted on and drawn. No one deciphered the child's scribbles that indicated the car's license plate and him. Except for Carter. It was their car, and his parents had died. When it all happened, Carter got scared, climbed out, and ran away. Like Zoe, he hit his head and didn't remember much. But there was no one to help him, so Carter became a wanderer. He rummaged through dumpsters until Zoe saw him. And then he recognized himself in her drawings. She saw him climbing out and running away. Carter didn't see the girl, otherwise he would have helped her and stayed by her side. "Zoe, my girl." "You're talking," exclaimed Henry, rushing into the room. "But only a little, Dad." "I'm shy," she said. "Oh, what a joy!" exclaimed Henry. He apologized to the children for not trusting them and installing the camera. And in that instant, he removed it and threw it away. Now, all that remained was to prove that Carter was the son of those spouses who were involved in the accident in order to restore his rights. "But why didn't you immediately say that your parents died in the accident?" Henry asked. "I didn't remember much. And what I remembered, I wanted to forget. My parents were constantly arguing, and my dad accused my mom of her past. I didn't understand what he was talking about, but I didn't like it. They had another argument that day at home. It seems he accused her that I'm not his son. He felt unwell on the way, and then the accident," said Carter. "Your dad died of a heart attack. He couldn't control the car. In essence, he wasn't at fault in the accident. No one was at fault in it," said Henry. "But to identify your identity and restore your rights, we need to conduct a DNA test." And only when they exhumed the remains of Carter's parents did Henry notice that his mother's name resembled the name of an acquaintance of his. Henry vaguely remembered her, but the name was remarkable, Ilona. When he buried his wife, he was not concerned with the names of other victims. He only knew that everyone had died. Ilona. Yes, she was among the girls they had fun with along with friends, Ilona. But Henry thought it was a fictional name. They were either Penelope, Angelica's, or Samantha. What a coincidence. When Carter took the DNA test, Henry, without telling him, also took his own test. "What's there to look at?" said Henry's mother when he came to her with an envelope containing sealed results. "Clearly, the boy is your copy. That's how it is. You never know where you'll find and where you'll lose." "Well, Mom, take a look." "I can't, my hands are trembling," said Henry. His mother opened the envelope. It was clearly written in black and white that there was a 99.9% match. Carter turned out to be Henry's son. Such things happen. Fate gave him a son he didn't even know about. A year before that, Henry had contracted mumps and became infertile. And now, only 11 years later, fate brought him into his house. And after another 6 years, it dotted all the I's. Fate seemed to test Henry's strength and check if he was capable of accepting his son. "You can choose which surname to take, the one you were born with or the real one, mine," said Henry to his son. "Why choose?" "It seems clear to me," said the young man. And yes, for those curious, there was no hint between him and Zoe of what seemed to Henry. Carter always treated her as an older brother and took care of her throughout his life. He even walked Zoe down the aisle when she got married.